My name is Julia Reyes. I'm 34, and I don't know if I'm in love with my husband anymore. That's a brutal sentence to say out loud, even if it's just to you, some stranger I'll never meet. But I need to say it, because it's been sitting in the back of my throat for months. Like a weight I'm not strong enough to swallow or spit out. I didn't marry a cruel man. I married Aaron. Thoughtful. Protective. Quiet, but not in that cold, shut-you-out kind of way. More like he just observed the world from the side of the room before joining in. He was safe. Not in a boring way, no, in a steady way. The kind of man who made you feel like you didn't have to be on all the time. You could just be. I remember the way he used to pull me close in bed, his hand on the small of my back like it belonged there. Sometimes he'd kiss my shoulder in the morning and not say anything, just breathe me in. That used to be enough to make me feel wanted. Like all of me, my body, my thoughts, my chaos, mattered. But now it's different. Now, his hand lands on my back the same way you'd pat down a blanket in winter. Methodical. Absent. Like a habit someone told him to keep. Last night, he kissed me before bed, and I actually flinched, not because it hurt, but because I didn't expect it. And when I turned to look at him, hoping for something in his eyes, heat, hunger, anything, he was already rolling away. I used to laugh with him. God, we used to talk about everything, our theories about life, dumb TV shows, his weird obsession with UFO documentaries. But for the past few months, he only seems animated when he's talking about how insane the people at his job are. Especially the women. It started small. Casual remarks. She's too chatty, or that new girl's always trying to get attention. I'd brush it off. Office gossip, right? But then he stopped talking to them altogether. Like, completely. He goes out of his way to avoid eye contact. Won't sit in meetings if there are too many women. He calls it protecting our marriage. Like any female presence is some looming threat. Like if a woman breathes near him, he'll betray me. And somehow, I've become the villain in all this. Because I told him it's not normal. That it's isolating and kind of paranoid. That other women at work shouldn't have to walk on eggshells around him just because he's married. He stared at me like I was the traitor. I'm doing this for us, Jules, he said. Why would you want me getting close to them? Because you used to trust me. Because I used to trust you. Because I'm not afraid of other women, I'm afraid of this version of you. This man who sees threats instead of people. Who shuts out half the world and calls it loyalty. I tried to tell myself it was just a phase. Stress. Burnout. Some kind of overcorrection from a bad experience. But the more I tiptoe around his moods, the more I shrink. I don't know who I am in this marriage anymore. Am I the jealous wife he's protecting? Or the unreasonable one pushing him toward temptation? Last weekend, we went to dinner with some friends. I wore the dress he once called unfair to men, hoping he'd say something, anything. He didn't even look up when I walked in. Later, in the car, I reached over and ran my fingers through his hair. A simple touch. Something I've done 100 times. He leaned slightly into it, but then said, "You're trying to distract me." It wasn't flirtatious. It was a warning. Like my affection was some kind of manipulation. I stared out the window the whole drive home, swallowing the tears that kept threatening to spill. The moment it hit me, really hit me, was 2 nights ago. We were brushing our teeth side by side. He reached over and wiped toothpaste off my chin. I smiled. A tiny, instinctive thing. But when I looked at his reflection in the mirror, he didn't smile back. He just looked annoyed. Like touching me was part of a chore list. That was it. The exact second I knew, something has changed. And maybe it's been changing for a long time. Maybe I've just been too scared to admit how far we've drifted. But I can't keep pretending this is normal. Not when I'm slowly disappearing. Aaron wasn't always like this. And I don't mean just the silent dinners or the way he locks himself in his home office now. I mean, he used to see me. Really see me. He's a software engineer, one of those brilliant, methodical minds that can fix a broken line of code in seconds, but stumbles over emotional nuance. I used to think that was part of his charm. While I, raised in a house of loud opinions, emotions worn on sleeves, felt everything at full volume, he brought calm. Focus. Stability. But lately, that calm feels more like distance. And I'm starting to resent how quiet he is. 2 weeks ago, I was trying to tell him about something that happened at my office, a new project I was leading, the first one I'd pitched in months. I was buzzing, excited, a little nervous. I sat on the edge of the couch, waiting for him to look up from his phone. He didn't. I kept talking anyway. And then Meredith looked surprised I spoke up, which was annoying, but also satisfying. Like, see? I do have good ideas. I laughed, hoping he'd at least crack a smile. Instead, he reached out and put his hand on my thigh. Gave it a squeeze. Kept scrolling. It was a small thing. Probably nothing to him. Maybe even affection. But it landed like a slap. You didn't hear a word I said, I told him. Yes, I did, he mumbled. Something about Meredith and a project. You're amazing. It felt like a script. Something you say to keep the peace, not because you're actually with the person in front of you. That's not the point, I said. You didn't engage. You didn't ask me anything. Now he looked up, frustrated. Jules, I'm just tired. I've been working since 7. I can't give 100% attention every second. But you can touch me? I snapped. Like I'm some houseplant you water occasionally so I don't die? His jaw tightened. God, I'm trying, Julia. You're always saying we don't connect, but when I reach for you, you act like I'm the enemy. I stared at him, stunned. The room suddenly felt smaller. It's not about sex, Aaron. I know that, he said quickly. But that's the only time you seem close to me. The rest of the time you're somewhere else. I wanted to scream. To shake him. To ask how he didn't see the truth, that I'm starving for him emotionally, not physically. That when he touches me now, it doesn't feel like love, it feels like a shortcut. A workaround. Like maybe if he grabs my hip or kisses my neck, I'll forget how alone I feel in this house. But instead, I shut down. We went to bed without another word. He spooned me like always, arm draped around my waist, like a routine. I stared at the wall, completely awake. The next day, I tried to make peace. I brought him coffee while he was working, lingered in the doorway of his office. He gave me a distracted smile, kissed my cheek, and went back to typing. I walked out feeling more alone than before. It keeps happening in these quiet, invisible moments. Like when I tell him I'm anxious about a presentation and he replies, "You've got this," then walks away. Like when I cry during a movie and he changes the subject because it's just a story. Like when I reach for conversation and he offers a kiss instead. I used to crave his touch. Now, sometimes, I brace for it. Because it doesn't come with anything. No connection. No curiosity. Just contact. And when I try to explain that, when I say I need more words, more engagement, more him, he gets defensive. Not everything has to be a therapy session, he said last week. No, it doesn't. But not everything can be solved with a hand on my thigh, either. The worst part? He thinks he's loving me well. And I don't know how to tell him that I'm slowly becoming someone who doesn't feel lovable at all. Aaron wasn't always this hard to reach. Back when we met, 8 years ago at a friend's lake house, he was shy, sure. But once he opened up, he had this quiet warmth to him. He didn't say much, but what he said mattered. And when he looked at me, it felt like he really saw me. Now, it's like he's squinting through me. He's a cybersecurity analyst at a private firm. All day, he stares at threat reports, phishing simulations, digital breaches. He's trained to look for warning signs, to assume risk hides in plain sight. And somewhere along the line, I think he started seeing people the same way. Especially women. Last Friday, I asked him how his workday went, something I do every evening while we're cooking dinner together. It used to be our soft landing, our little ritual. He chopped, I stirred, we debriefed. But this time, he just muttered, "Another awkward day." I swear, every time I say a word to one of them, they start making weird eye contact. I set the spoon down. "Who's them, Aaron?" "The women. At work." He didn't even look up. It's easier not to engage. I stood there, stunned. You do realize that sounds, not just paranoid, but kind of sexist, right? He finally looked at me. "No, it sounds like I'm being careful. You should want that." I couldn't believe it. "I want you to be respectful. Not terrified." His voice sharpened. "You're blowing this up." I wasn't, though. And he knew it. Later that night, I was curled up on the couch scrolling through my emails, still stewing, when he sat beside me and started rubbing my shoulders. "I don't need a massage," I said, not looking at him. "You always like this." "Not when I feel ignored all day and then touched like a reset button." He pulled back like I'd slapped him. I was trying to connect. "No," I said, finally turning to face him. "You're trying to skip steps. You shut me out emotionally, and then act surprised when your hands don't magically fix everything." His mouth opened, then closed. He stood up and left the room without a word. I don't know why that hurt more than anything. Maybe because I was begging for a conversation, and he responded with withdrawal. Again. The next morning, he brought me coffee in bed, like he always does on weekends. He leaned down and kissed my forehead, whispered, "I love you, Jules." It should have felt sweet. But it didn't. It felt like habit. And when I said, "I love you too," I realized I wasn't sure I meant it anymore, or at least not in the way I used to. He tried again later, wrapping his arms around me while I loaded the dishwasher. His lips brushed my neck. His breath warm on my skin. But I didn't melt. I froze. "Can you not right now?" I asked. He dropped his arms immediately. "Jesus. I can't win with you lately. Because you're not listening. I don't want more touches. I want presence. I want you to talk to me. I do talk to you." "No, Aaron. You monologue about work and avoid everyone who makes you uncomfortable. And then you kiss me like that fixes everything." He stepped back, visibly frustrated. "So what, now I can't even touch my wife without it being a problem?" "It's not you that's the problem," I said, my voice cracking. "It's that I feel like a stranger in my own marriage." And the truth is, I didn't even fully understand what I meant until I said it. We stood there, silent, the dishwasher humming behind me. It was the loudest silence we'd ever had. Maybe he thought affection meant love. But I was starting to realize I couldn't feel loved if I didn't feel heard. And I don't think he even knows the difference. It happened again last night. I was folding laundry in the bedroom, trying to keep my mind busy, because when it's quiet, the overthinking gets loud. Aaron came up behind me, wrapped his arms around my waist. I didn't move. I just waited. His hands slid to my hips, then lower. He kissed my neck. Soft, familiar. A move he used to know would make me melt. But instead of warmth, I felt pressure. Instead of turning into him, I went still. And he noticed. "You okay?" he asked against my skin. I gave him a soft, humorless chuckle. "Yeah. Just distracted." He turned me around to face him, searching my eyes like there was something there he could still read. "You've been so far away lately," he said. "I miss you." I looked at him. At his mouth. His tired eyes. The man I once couldn't stop touching. I wanted to feel something. I really did. But when he leaned in to kiss me, my body didn't respond. His lips met mine. Gentle. Familiar. But I just stood there, stiff. Going through the motions. Counting seconds like I was underwater, waiting to surface. He pulled back. Did I do something wrong? I wanted to say, "No, it's not you. It's me." But that wasn't true. And I was tired of lying. So I said nothing. He tried again, this time with that playful energy he used to use when we were flirty and carefree. He gave me a little smack on the butt as he walked past me toward the bathroom. It used to make me laugh. Now, I flinched. "Seriously?" I said, sharper than I meant to. He stopped in the doorway. "I'm trying, Julia." "What do you want me to do?" "I don't know." I snapped, hugging a pillow to my chest. "Maybe not turn every quiet moment into foreplay?" He blinked at me. I was being affectionate. "No. You were being sexual." He crossed his arms. "So I can't kiss you? Can't touch you? What do you want from me?" "I want connection," I said, louder now. "I want to talk about things that matter. I want to feel like I'm more than a body you come home to." "You are more," he said, exasperated. "But how am I supposed to show that if you recoil every time I get near you?" I stared at the floor, my heart pounding with guilt and fury and something else I couldn't name. He turned and left without another word. The bedroom was silent except for the slow thud of my own resentment. And I hated it. Because I used to love his touch. Used to crave it. But now, even when I want it, I just can't. Not when we haven't laughed in weeks. Not when he avoids every serious conversation. Not when physical affection feels like a substitute for something he's afraid to give, vulnerability. He doesn't realize that every kiss without connection is just hollow. That the more he touches me without talking to me, the more I start to feel like an object instead of a partner. I sat on the edge of the bed, pressing my palms into my thighs, trying to keep from crying again. And then the thought slipped out, unfiltered, unwelcome. Why does everything have to turn into sex? We were out at a small Italian restaurant we used to love. Dim lighting, candles flickering in tiny glass holders, the scent of garlic and butter hanging thick in the air. It should have felt romantic. Safe. It didn't. Aaron had made the reservation, a surprise. "We need a night out," he'd said, smiling like he was still trying. Like effort could substitute for connection. I tried to match his energy. I even wore that navy blue wrap dress he once said made me look like I stepped out of a dream. But inside, I felt hollow. Like I was putting on a costume for a version of us that didn't exist anymore. Halfway through the meal, he reached across the table and took my hand. "I've been thinking," he said, thumb grazing my knuckles. "We should go away. Just the two of us. A weekend somewhere quiet. No work. No distractions." I blinked. "A weekend away?" He nodded, eyes hopeful. "Yeah. I thought it might help, whatever this is. I just want to get back to us." I stared at him for a long time, struggling to put words to the ache I'd been carrying. My throat burned. My hand, still in his, felt heavier than it should. You think a weekend is going to fix this? His brow furrowed. I think it's a start. A start to what, Aaron? You still don't talk to me. You don't ask how I'm doing. You avoid anything real, especially when it's uncomfortable. That's not fair. It is fair, I snapped, my voice sharper than I intended. A couple at the next table glanced over. I lowered my tone, but my anger simmered. You shut down every time I try to go deeper. And then you expect a hotel room and some sex to magically repair all of it? He dropped my hand. You're blowing this way out of proportion. I'm not. I whispered, almost shaking. You won't even talk to the women at your job because you've decided any conversation might get you accused of something. And somehow that makes me the one who's difficult. You call it being careful, but it's fear, Aaron. And it's bleeding into everything. Including us. His eyes went cold. So now I'm some paranoid sexist just because I set boundaries at work? No, I said, voice cracking. You're someone who's scared of intimacy. Who confuses physical attention with connection. Who avoids emotional vulnerability like it's contagious. The room felt smaller, tighter. My breath quickened. I could feel the tears rising, my whole face flushing with heat. I feel so unseen by you, I said, barely holding it together. I feel like I'm standing in the middle of our relationship waving my arms and screaming, and you won't even look up. He sat back, stunned. Silent. And that silence broke me. I stood up, knocking my chair slightly, threw my napkin on the table, and muttered, I need air. Outside, the night was cool and quiet. I leaned against the brick wall of the building, chest heaving, trying not to sob. How did we get here? We were the couple that used to stay up talking till 2 a.m. about nothing. The couple who used to find each other across a crowded room and smile like there was a secret only we shared. Now we're just another pair of strangers sitting in awkward silence at dinner, hoping a plate of pasta and forced eye contact will fix years of neglect. I pressed my palms to my eyes, shame blooming in my chest like wildfire. He was trying, wasn't he? So why did I still feel so alone? Was it me? Was I asking for too much? Or had I simply woken up one day realizing that the version of love we were living wasn't enough anymore? I heard the restaurant door open. Footsteps. Aaron. But I didn't look up. Because in that moment, I wasn't ready to face him. Or myself that it's been 12 days since the restaurant. Since I raised my voice in public. Since he sat across from me with eyes that didn't look angry, but tired. Hollow. Like someone watching a slow leak drown everything. We've spoken, of course. Brief, functional words. Did you take the bins out? Your mom called. There's soup in the fridge. But the intimacy, whatever threads still tethered us together, has frayed to silence. He still makes coffee in the morning. Still leaves mine in the same chipped ceramic mug on the windowsill. But now he doesn't wait for me to come downstairs. He just sets it there and disappears into his home office. I drink it anyway. It tastes like habit. Last night, I walked into the living room to find him on the couch, staring at a paused Netflix screen he never hit play on. The remote lay untouched in his lap, his jaw clenched in that quiet way he does when he's hurting and refuses to name it. He looked up when I walked in, but didn't speak. And for the first time, I didn't blame him. Because I saw it. The loneliness in his posture. The apology he didn't know how to say. The confusion on how to fix something when the instructions were written in a language neither of us speaks anymore. He isn't the villain of this story. He's just a man who grew up in a world where being stoic made you strong. Where touching meant trying, and talking meant risking too much. I see that now. And God, I miss him. Not just the man he used to be, but the way we used to be. I missed the way his hand would reach for mine under the table. The stupid inside jokes about the neighbors. The way he used to trace circles on my back in bed while we whispered half-asleep thoughts. But I don't know how to get back there. I don't know if we can. I found myself crying in the shower this morning. Not loud, just that helpless kind of weeping that sneaks out when you're not trying to cry at all. I don't know if I was mourning him, or the version of myself who used to feel safe in his love. I keep wondering if I've made it all worse. If I pushed him too hard. Asked for something he couldn't give. And yet, what's the alternative? Keep pretending? Keep trading touches for truths? He walked past me this evening, headed to the kitchen, and our eyes met for a second. Just a second. But something flickered there. Regret. Hope. Maybe even love, buried under the weight of everything we've left unsaid. And for the first time in days, I felt a pull toward him instead of away. I don't know what it means yet. But I know I can't keep living in this limbo. This house full of tension and missed connections. Something has to change. So tonight, as I lay awake listening to the distant hum of his laptop fan through the wall, I made a decision. I'm going to try. Not because I'm sure it'll work. But because I remember what it felt like to love him without fear, and I want to know if there's still a way back to that it was raining when it happened. Not the dramatic thunderstorm kind, just a soft, steady drizzle tapping the windows like a clock reminding us we were running out of time. He was in the kitchen, rinsing a plate. I stood by the door, coat half-zipped, debating whether I should go for a walk just to breathe. Instead, I cleared my throat. "Aaron," I said gently. He looked up. "Yeah?" I hesitated. "Can we talk?" He dried his hands slowly, nodded, and followed me into the living room. No grand gestures. No, finally. Just a quiet willingness. We sat down, opposite ends of the couch. Not touching. "I've been thinking," I started. "A lot. About us. About everything." He nodded but didn't interrupt. "I know I've been distant. Angry. Maybe even unfair," I admitted. "I felt like you weren't seeing me anymore, like I was fighting for something alone." He exhaled through his nose, eyes heavy. "I thought I was protecting us. From the outside world. From judgment. From mistakes I didn't want to make." "I know," I whispered. "But in doing that, you built a wall around yourself. And I was on the outside, Aaron. Not just the women at your work. Me." His expression flickered, just for a moment, with something close to regret. I didn't know how to say that without it turning into a fight. I added. "Me neither," he said quietly. We both laughed, sad, tired laughter. Not because anything was funny, but because the weight of everything unsaid had finally deflated into honesty. "I still care about you," I said, eyes stinging. "But I don't know if we still fit." He looked down at his hands, fidgeting. "I keep thinking, maybe if I just tried harder." "It's not about trying harder," I said. "It's about trying differently. About letting me in, even when it's messy. Even when you're scared." He nodded once, slowly. "I'm not sure I know how." I believed him. That was the hardest part. We sat in silence for a long time. Then he reached over, cautiously, and put his hand on my knee. Not possessively. Not as a lead-in to something else. Just contact. A reminder that once, we belonged to each other. I leaned over and rested my head on his shoulder. He kissed my forehead. Soft. Familiar. But not romantic. Grief in the shape of love. That night, he slept on the couch. Not because I asked him to, but because he knew. Some things don't break with noise. They just dissolve. Quietly. Like rain fading into the sidewalk. You know, it's strange. I used to think that love meant effort. That if two people just tried hard enough, it would work. That you could outrun the silence. Outwork the distance. Patch up every cracked piece with kisses and weekend getaways and shared routines. But I've learned something else now. You can love someone deeply, and still feel completely alone in their presence. My name's Julia. I'm 34. And I stayed in a relationship far longer than my heart did. When Aaron and I first met, it was electric. He made me laugh until my ribs ached. We had this easy rhythm, like we spoke a private language no one else understood. And in the beginning, I thought that would be enough to carry us through anything. But relationships don't fall apart overnight. They erode slowly. Like cliffs. One missed moment at a time. One shut-down conversation. One touch that feels more like obligation than connection. And still, I stayed. Because I remembered who we were. Because I hoped he'd come back to me, not physically, but emotionally. But hope is a dangerous kind of glue. Aaron's way of showing love was always physical. Holding my hand. Rubbing my back. Reaching for me in bed. And I used to crave that closeness too. Until it started to feel like the only thing he knew how to give. What I needed was his mind. His fears. His honesty. I needed him to see me. Instead, I started to feel like a housekeeper with benefits. And every time I tried to open the door to something deeper, he'd lock it. Or worse, he'd pretend he didn't hear the knock. There was no screaming, no cheating, no betrayal. Just a quiet ache that grew louder every day. Until I couldn't hear myself anymore. I think what hurts most is that he wasn't cruel. He wasn't careless. He was just limited. Emotionally guarded. Trained to be careful around women, to avoid missteps, avoid risk, and somehow that carefulness seeped into us. Into me. He built a wall so high, he couldn't even see I was on the other side. And maybe that's what finally broke us. Not a fight, but the realization that I was asking for something he didn't even know how to give. And I couldn't keep starving in a relationship that looked full from the outside. So we let go. Quietly. Kindly. Some love stories end in explosions. Ours ended in a whisper. I've cried more than I'd like to admit. I've also laughed more than I thought I would. There's a strange relief in naming the truth, even when it hurts. And now, I'm learning to come home to myself. I've started reading again. Cooking meals I like without wondering if he'll eat them. I sit in silence without needing it to be filled. I've even started therapy, something I used to think was only for big problems. But the biggest problem was that I forgot how to need me. If you're listening to this, maybe you're in something like what I was in. Maybe you feel invisible even when someone's arms are around you. And maybe, like me, you've been gaslighting yourself for months, telling yourself it's fine, that it's just a rough patch, that it's normal to feel lonely in love. It's not. Love shouldn't make you disappear. So here's what I'll leave you with: you're allowed to want more. You're allowed to need depth. And you're allowed to walk away, not because you stopped loving them, but because you finally started loving yourself enough to stop settling for almost. Aaron will always be part of my story. But I won't keep writing chapters where I lose myself on every page. And maybe, just maybe, that's where the real love begins.